الرحيم. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، وعلى عفوه بعد قدرته، وعلى طول أناته في غضبه. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك يا نبي الله، صلى الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين، لا سيما ابن عمك وأخيك ووصيك علي أمير المؤمنين، والآية الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. السلام عليك يا أول مظلوم وأول من غصب حقه، ورحمة الله وبركاته. On a night like this, two major occurrences took place. The first occurrence was the revelation of the Quran, and hence Laylatul Qadr. And it's worth noting that according to the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, Laylatul Qadr is not either or, either tonight or the 21st or the 23rd. According to a hadith by Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, says that all these nights contribute to determining our destiny. The eve of the 18th, يكون فيها التقدير, the Imam says. The preliminary decree takes place on the eve of the 18th. And then the eve of the 21st, it's further cemented and solidified. And it's only finalized on the eve of the 23rd. So the decree is issued. It becomes final. The other major occurrence, the other major event that happened on a night like this was the assassination of the commander of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And this is a major event that we commemorate. And these two events have strong correlations together. These two major events, because of the relationship between Imam Ali alayhi salam and the Quran, are intertwined. If the Quran is an endless ocean of knowledge, then Ali ibn Abi Talib is the carrier of this ocean. If the Quran provides guidance, then it's Ali ibn Abi Talib that delivers that guidance. Ali ibn Abi Talib invites us to apply the teachings of the Quran, to embrace the verses of the Quran, and the Quran also directs us towards Ali ibn Abi Talib. This is why the Prophet famously said, and this is mentioned in Sunni books as well as Shia books, he said, Aliyun ma'al Quran wal Quran ma'a Ali. لا يفترقان حتى يرد علي الحوض. Ali is with the Quran and the Quran is with Ali. The relationship is a deep relationship, and you cannot separate between Ali ibn Abi Talib and the Quran. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says that when this verse was revealed to the Prophet, وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ فِي إِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ. It's in Surah Yasin. You've heard the surah many times. So when this verse was revealed to the Prophet, Imam al-Baqir says, Abu Bakr and Umar stood up. They said, Ya Rasulullah, is this verse referring to the Torah, the book of Moses? He said, no. Is this verse referring to the Bible? He said, no. فَأَقْبَلَ عَلِيٌّ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ. The Imam says, this is when Amir al-Mu'mineen came, entered inside the mosque, So he looked at Ali and he said, هذا هو الإمام المبين الذي فيه أحصى كل شيء. In the Arabic word, there is no word that is all-encompassing like the word kul. When you say kul, it encompasses everything. It means literally everything. And there is no word in the Arabic language that can be applied literally to everything that you see and hear and imagine, like shay. These two words come together in this verse. وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ. Literally everything has been inscribed, has been infused في إمام مبين. This is the Imam al-Mubin. Then the Prophet ﷺ says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me every field of knowledge. I possess all the knowledge out there. I know everything. What happened in the past, what's happening today, what will happen in the future. I possess all of that. فِيَّ أُحْصِيَ كُلَّ عِلْمٍ. And then he says, and I gave all of that to Ali ibn Abi Talib. So he possesses all the knowledge. So Ali represents to us, he represents the source of knowledge, because he is the gateway to the Prophet's knowledge. The Prophet famously said, أَنَا مَدِينَةُ الْعِلْمِ. I am the village, the city of knowledge, and Ali is the gates to this city. This is mentioned in Sunni books. So Ali is the source of knowledge. He is the gateway to the Prophet's knowledge, and the Prophet is the gateway to the divine knowledge. Right? Let me just give you two small examples of Ali's knowledge. Ali was about to pray. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he was standing, raised his hands like this, was about to say Allahu Akbar, when a man approached the Imam and he said to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'minin, just a quick question. How can we differentiate between animals that lay eggs and animals that give birth? As the Imam was about to say Allahu Akbar, he said to him, the animals that have conspicuous ears that you can see give birth. And the animals that have inconspicuous ears, you can't see their ears, they lay eggs. And then he said, Allahu Akbar. Back then, people's resources were very limited. There was no Google. People's understanding was very limited. But Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he was asked this question, this is telling of Amir al-Mu'mineen's knowledge of nature, of this world. And his knowledge of nature is minimal when compared to his knowledge that pertains to the unseen, to the world beyond this world. This is why he says, Saluni. He was the only person that ever said this, made this statement, and he was truthful. He said, Saluni, ask me before you lose me. فإني والله أعلم بطرق السماء من طرق الأرض. My knowledge, my familiarity with what's beyond this world, the knowledge of the unseen is even more than my knowledge about this physical world. The second example, صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Two women give birth. One of the women gives birth to a boy, and the other woman gives birth to a girl. Back then, the mindset of the Arabs preferred boys over girls. So the mother that gave birth to the girl, in the middle of the night, she steals the boy and places her daughter in his bed. They wake up in the morning. She's claiming that the boy is hers. So they go to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, the boy is mine. And the other woman is making the same claim. The boy is mine. Back then, no DNA testing, no cameras, no nothing. Amir al-Mu'mineen spontaneously, without the need to think, contemplate, seek advice from his advisors, he said, weigh the milk, the breast milk of both of these women. Fill one cup with this mother's milk and the other cup with this mother's milk. Weigh it. Whichever is heavier belongs to the mother or the boy. 14 centuries later we come. We find out that the milk varies. Yes, the mother of the girl produces more milk, but the mother of boys, the milk is richer in fat and protein. The Amir al-Mu'mineen spontaneously said the heavier milk belongs to the mother of the boy, and he gives the boy to that girl. So to us, Amir al-Mu'mineen is the source of knowledge. This is why we go to Amir al-Mu'mineen. To understand Islam, you go to Amir al-Mu'mineen. To know the Prophet, you go to Amir al-Mu'mineen. To know God, you go to Amir al-Mu'mineen. To understand life, you go to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Read the maxims of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the wisdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen. To understand life, to unlock the secrets of life, you go to Amir al-Mu'mineen. To understand death, you go to Amir al-Mu'mineen. To understand the Akhirah, you go to Amir al-Mu'mineen. To know what's in paradise, you go to Amir al-Mu'mineen. To know what's happening in the heavens, you go to Amir al-Mu'mineen. We go to Amir al-Mu'mineen because he is the source of knowledge. And Amir al-Mu'mineen is the source of guidance. And Amir al-Mu'mineen is the paragon of morality. He did not just encompass morality and epitomize morality. We seek our morality from Amir al-Mu'mineen. We are inspired by Amir al-Mu'mineen's morality. They say that one day, a non-Muslim, when he heard about Amir al-Mu'mineen's assassination and what took place after his assassination, he quickly said, I believe in this man to be a man of God. And I believe in his religion. And I believe in the God that he believes in. And I adopt his view of life. I said to him, why? What happened? Did you read a book? Did you watch a YouTube clip? Did you? He said, no. I had never seen in my life or heard about a man who becomes the attorney and the lawyer and the defendant of his own assassin. In these civilized countries, human rights groups struggle to gain access to prisons and immigration centers to check on immigrants who are mistreated. In these countries, in the 21st century, let alone back then, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, make sure you feed him from the food that you are feeding me. After he was struck with the sword, yes. Beware of infringing upon his right. What right, ya Amir al-Mu'mineen? He's a wicked man, Ibn Muljam. No, he's got rights and we have to uphold his rights. So he said, I realize that this is a man of God. This justice is divine justice. This is divine justice. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And these are just small examples of how great Amir al-Mu'mineen was. Inshallah, one night I'll speak about his system of governance. And one night, inshallah, I'll speak about Nahj al-Balagha, this important book, this important treasure trove. And unfortunately, we haven't been using. So many examples, so many stories of how just, altruistic, wise Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was. But tonight, I would like to, the few minutes I have remaining of my time, I would like to speak about the ethics of war in the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen. It is so difficult for a speaker to speak about Ali ibn Abi Talib on a night like this. Because to be honest with you, we don't know where to begin. where to end, what to speak about. Each virtue of Amir al-Mu'mineen is unique, unlike any other virtue of other people. This is why this is a colossal task that I am undertaking. Very difficult for me. I thought about speaking about the ethics of war, because during times of peace, usually nations, governments, they tend to adhere to certain values. But when a war breaks out, even the most civilized of nations and governments, they tend to step over these ideals, principles. I don't need to cite any example to you, but there are plenty of examples in Iraq. What happened in Iraq? When a government feels that it's above accountability and above the law, they feel that they have full authority to do whatever they want. Look at what happened in Iraq. Look at what happened in Afghanistan. Look at what's happening in Yemen. Look at what's happening in the Ukraine. The atrocities that are being committed. Cruel, cruel. So you can understand a person's commitment to these ideals and principles, not during times of peace, but during times of war. Let's look at Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam. First of all, there was a full consensus on Amir al-Mu'minin. Literally everyone pledged their allegiance to Amir al-Mu'minin. They voted for Amir al-Mu'minin. Everyone, and I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of people. They were sick and tired of the previous caliph and his oppression and his injustice. So it was only Amir al-Mu'minin. He refused. Inshallah, I'll speak about that one night, maybe tomorrow night. He refused initially. They said, Ya Amir al-Mu'minin, these people will not unite on anyone other than you. You're the only one that can quench the thirst of these people. Right? Amir al-Mu'minin had full authority. The people wanted Amir al-Mu'minin to be free in exercising his authority, implementing his reign. Full authority. Amir al-Mu'minin is the law to them. He's above the law. He is the law. Yet, Amir al-Mu'minin, he wasn't answerable to anyone. The authority that he had, the position that he was occupying, not answerable to anyone. And everyone is answerable to him. And yet, Amir al-Mu'minin made himself answerable to the public. He tied his own hands, saying that I have to be answerable to you. You have to question me. You have to question my integrity. If you see me accumulating wealth, you have to come and ask me, where did you get your money from? So he made himself answerable to the public. So with full authority, Amir al-Mu'minin was free to do whatever he wanted to do, right? But look at the principles that Amir al-Mu'minin adhered by. Number one, he would never start a war. He would never be the aggressor. Even though today in the wars that we witness, when a government or an army preempts the opponent, their enemies, they would always have the upper hand. If you know that the opposing army will engage in war, you wouldn't wait for the army to attack you. You have to preemptively attack them. Otherwise, if they attack you, they could paralyze you. But here, Amir al-Mu'minin's principle had to override this conventional law that everyone adheres by in wars. But before I cite the example, I have to also say that Amir al-Mu'minin tried to avoid engaging in any war. Even though usually, if you're in the position of power, if you're more powerful than your enemy, why wouldn't you engage in war? You can crush your enemy. Amir al-Mu'minin had a gigantic army in the Battle of the Camel. And yet he wanted to avoid war. Wars are ugly. Wars are not good. So Amir al-Mu'mineen went out of his way to try to reason with his enemies to back off. In the Battle of the Camel, you know what Amir al-Mu'mineen did? He goes to the front line. He takes off his helmet. He removes his armor, throws his shield, throws his sword, and he crosses the line of fire. They were in a state of war. This is before the beginning of the war. They could assassinate Amir al-Mu'mineen. But Amir al-Mu'mineen, to reach out to those people, he himself went to visit Talha and Zubayr to reason with them, asking them, you were amongst the first people to pledge your allegiance to me. This is a stab in the back. Why do you want to fight? Why are you waging this war against me? And he was so convincing that Zubayr said, you know what? I'm not fighting in this war. But then it was because of his son that told him, you chickened out. When you saw the sword of Ali ibn Abi, and he was a brave man. Zubayr was a brave man. So you can't challenge a brave man. His son, he exploited this weaknesses in his father, and he said that you chickened out. You're scared of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So he broke his promise and he took part in the war. He talked to Talha, he talked to Zubayr. Why are you waging this war? They have no justification whatsoever. They said, we're adamant, we want to wage this war. The Imam said, he told his army, we're not starting this war. If you remember, in Ashura, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was abiding by the same principle. When he met with the army of Hur, with a mere 1,000 soldiers, Imam al-Hussein had 2,000 soldiers with him. They said, Ya Aba Abdullah, if we fight these people, we can proceed to Kufa, and this will change the equation. We have the upper hand now. He said, Ma kuntu li abda'ahum biqital. I would never initiate a war. The Imam said, I'm not starting this war. Only when they wage the war, I will defend myself. I will not be the aggressor. There were few skirmishes here and there. The Imam refused to start the war. And then he told his son, Muhammad al-Hanafiyyah, who was the standard bearer. He said to him, I want to take a nap. If something happens, if these people engage, come and wake me up. Let me know. So he goes inside the tent. Suddenly, the enemies, they engage. They attack. So he goes to his father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, wakes him up. He says, I could still see the sleep in his eyes. So Amir al-Mu'mineen took his sword with utmost confidence and bravery and courage. He's not scared of them. Without wearing a shield, without wearing an armor, without wearing a helmet. And he charged at the enemy. So his son, Muhammad, says to him, Abba, afi mithli hadha al-yawm? A day like this, you are surrounded by the enemies. They have arrows, spears, they have swords. No armor, no shield, no helmet. He said, Bunay, inna qitali hasiran ala ahdi Rasulillah akthara min qitali dari'a. You think during the time of the Prophet, how did we fight? In the Battle of Badr, the Muslims only had 2 swords. The rest were fighting with sticks. They only had a horse or 2. The rest were infantry. Not scared of these people. طبعا this happened after they killed the messenger of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. The Imam sent a young man to uphold the Quran, to raise the Quran and tell them that we ask you in the name of this Quran to come back to your senses and to seek refuge in the Quran, see what the Quran has to say. Why are you waging this war? So the woman, she ordered some people to attack his right hand. They severed his right hand and then his left hand. And then they killed him. This is when the decision was made to engage. The second principle that the Imam abided by was he wanted to end the war as swiftly as he can. While in today's wars, the leaders, the people involved, not the victims, not the nations, they would like to prolong the war, extend the war, because they all profiteer from the war. In Ukraine, for example, Putin, it would solidify his position of power. No one is going to think about the politics. No one's going to think about elections when he's in a state of war. Amir al-Mu'mineen could have said the same thing. I'm in a state of war. He wanted to end the war as soon as possible. This is why in the Battle of the Camel, they say that the battle lasted only a day or 3 days maximum. When the Imam realized that the epicenter of the war is the camel, he sent Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba to kill that camel, and the war came to an end. In the Battle of Siffin, Amir al-Mu'mineen walked into the battlefield. He called Muawiyah. Ya Muawiyah, if there is enmity between me and you, let's fight. Whoever kills the other can take over. So his army were saying, true, we have nothing to do with this war. The people of Sham have nothing to do with this war. The people of Kufa, if it's an enmity between just Muawiyah and Ali, let them fight together, see whoever wins gets to become the ruler. One day, Amr ibn al-As, the senior advisor of Muawiyah, he goes to see him in Sham. As he enters inside his palace, the hall that he was sitting in, Muawiyah laughs loudly. So Amr al-As says, Ya Amir, what makes you laugh like this? He said, every time I see you, I remember your scandal when you exposed your private parts to run away from Amir al-Mu'mineen's strike. He said, now that you mention this, it's also worth mentioning when Amir al-Mu'mineen challenged you. We were in the tent together. Your advisors were with you in the tent. You spoiled in your pants, O Amir. And when you were told that Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, what he's saying makes sense. Go and fight with Ali ibn. What did you say? You said, no one fights Ali alone. We fight him collectively. The whole army should engage with Ali alone. In the Battle of Nahrawan, Amir al-Mu'mineen only ruled for 4.5 years. They waged 3 wars against him. From day one, they conspired to topple his government through wars. In the Battle of Nahrawan, because Ali had made that statement in Siffin, the leader of the enemies, he said the same thing. He came to the battlefield. He said, Ya Ali, this war is between me and you, as if there is personal vendetta between the two. Let's fight together. Whoever wins gets to lead. When Amir al-Mu'mineen heard the statement, he said, Ma aqalla haya'ah. How shameful is this man? He knows that I don't fear engaging in a combat. I'm not fearful of this. And then they say Amir al-Mu'mineen he accepted the challenge with just 1 strike. They say that the Arabs learned the techniques of war from Ali ibn Abi Talib. He had 7 unique strikes. They used to come to the victims, to the dead, and they could tell if this guy was killed by Ali's sword or by everyone else. Because his strikes were unique. So he came. Amir al-Mu'mineen charged at the man with 1 strike. The strike was so fast and quick that the man himself didn't even feel the strike. So at first he laughed, thinking that Amir al-Mu'mineen missed. But then when the horse moved, he fell dead, dropped dead on the ground. So Amir al-Mu'mineen wanted to end the war because he did not want to profiteer from the war. The war is ugly. And every war that he engaged in, Nahrawan lasted 1 day, Jamal 1 day. It was just the Battle of Siffin that lasted for 3 months. It was because of reasons, inshallah, I'll talk about later. Also, Amir al-Mu'mineen never resorted to dirty tactics when it comes to war. Even though they say, al-harbu khud'a, you can resort to deceit when you fight. But there are tactics that Amir al-Mu'mineen never resorted to. Like, in the Battle of Siffin, Muawiyah managed to come before the army of Imam Ali alayhi salam, and he sought control over the river. And he blocked Amir al-Mu'mineen's army from gaining access to the water. They were thirsty. So he came to Amir al-Mu'mineen. What should we do? You're not allowing us to start the war because it's Muharram and to engage. And these people are not letting us drink. The Imam said, charge at them without fighting, just so they run away. So they charged at Muawiyah's army. They ran away. So now they have full control over the river. Amr ibn al-As comes to Muawiyah with all his advisors. They said, Ya Muawiyah, this was a fatal mistake that you committed by preventing Ali ibn Abi Talib from gaining access to the water. Now they have full control of the river. All they need to do is just to prevent us from reaching the water. We will die out of thirst. Muawiyah laughed. He said, you don't know Ali ibn Abi Talib. I know him. We prevent them, they won't prevent us. So all of a sudden, Ali ibn Abi Talib allowed Muawiyah's army to reach the water. They came to Amir and Ya Amir, they blocked us. We have the right to reciprocate. This is why Muawiyah has a famous saying. He says, لَأَغْلِبَنَّ بِدُنْيَاي دِينَ Ali. Ali is shackled. You know what ties Ali's hands? His morals. What ties Ali's hands is his principles. And this is why after the battle of the camel, this is when his enemies were emboldened. Ali pardoned everyone. Ali did not seek retribution, did not seek revenge. He allowed them to go. And this is what emboldened the enemies. But Ali wanted these values to be protected. Muawiyah's aim was to protect his position. Different mentalities. He gave them access to the water. Of course, these values are Islamic values. When the Prophet went to Khaybar, the Jews were in a fortress. They couldn't infiltrate the fortress. A man came from amongst the Jews who had converted to Islam. He said to the Prophet, he said, I know the access of the water. We can block the water and they would be forced to surrender. The Prophet said, no. This is not something, even with our enemies, this is not something that we would do. We never resort to tactics like this. In the Battle of the Camel, Amir al-Mu'mineen said, he told his army, there are things that you need to adhere by. If you are provoked by the women and children, they throw pebbles at you. They curse you. You should not be provoked. You should not react and act upon your impulses. You're not allowed to cut the trees, even though in wars, I've seen this in Iraq. You go from Baghdad to Samarra, you see all the trees. This was the case before. All the trees are chopped. Why? Because they used to use these trees to ambush the Americans. So the Americans came and they chopped all the trees between Baghdad and Samarra, 120 kilometers. Amir al-Mu'mineen said, you're not allowed to cut a tree. You're guests in the city of Basra. Yes, these people are waging this war. You engage because they are the aggressors. But you can't engage in anything unethical. The moment the enemies began to escape, flee from the battlefield, when the camel was killed, Amir al-Mu'mineen ordered his soldiers not to attack anyone fleeing the battlefield, not to attack an injured soldier from the enemy combatants, and not to take anything from the war booties. Someone comes to Imam Zayn al-Abidin. He says to him, isn't it strange how when the Prophet went to Mecca, he pardoned everyone, while Ali in the city of Basra, even after the war, his army were still engaging and they were chasing after the enemy combatants. Imam Zayn al-Abidin was sitting like this. Suddenly, he sat with anger. He said, no, this is not what happened. He said, the moment the camel was killed, the commander of Amir al-Mu'mineen's army was Malik al-Ashtar. He wrote him a letter, because he was inside the battlefield, saying that you should retreat right away. Malik al-Ashtar didn't think that this letter is an important letter maybe. So instead of reading it, he placed it under the saddle of the horse. And he continued. Otherwise, Amir al-Mu'mineen's orders was for Malik to back away. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Also, Amir al-Mu'mineen liked to fight at night, after sunset. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, isn't it better to engage during the day? He said, no, فَإِنَّهُ أَقَلُّ لِلْقَتْلِ. You know why? When it's dark, the strikes tend to miss. The arrows that you shoot tend to miss. You can't aim, right? أَقَلُّ لِلْقَتْلِ. And people can flee without being exposed. Let people flee. I don't want people to die. أقل للقتل. Nowadays, you see how wars happen? They have precision missiles to inflict as much damage as they can and to kill as many casualties as they can. Amir al-Mu'mineen wants to engage during the night so that people would miss and not be able to kill each other. These are some of the ethics of war. You might ask, eventually Muawiyah won, right? Was he smarter? No. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, قَدْ يَرَى الْحُوَّلُ الْقُلَّبْ وَجْهَ الْحِيلِ. No, I understand Muawiyah's techniques. I know how to fight if I wanted to resort to tactics like this. لكن معاوية يغدر ويفجر. Muawiyah resorts to deceit. He's an unprincipled man, uncultured man. I am a man of integrity. And this is why Muawiyah is gone, perished for good, while Amir al-Mu'mineen is alive, because Amir al-Mu'mineen represented those values, represented those virtues. Aba Yazid, a Sunni poet says, his name is Abdul Baqi al-Umari. He says, أين القصور أبا يزيد ولهوها. What happened to all the palaces? You ruled for more than 30 years. There is no mention of Muawiyah. You mention him to curse him. والصافنات ولهوها والسؤدد. What happened to all the damsels, all the wealth that you had, all the soldiers, all the armies that you had? هذا ضريحك لو علمت ببؤسه. Where's the grave of Muawiyah? Why doesn't Muawiyah have any visitors? سكر الذباب به فراح يعربد. You know who visits Muawiyah's grave? The flies that hover over his grave. قم وارمق النجف الأغر بنظرة. Now look at the golden globe, the golden dome of Amir al-Mu'mineen. يرتد طرفك باك أرمد. When you look at the dome of Amir al-Mu'mineen, you can't help but cry. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. You are with these values are immortals. And these values were represented by Amir al-Mu'mineen, personified by Ali ibn Abi Talib. Inshallah, we will talk about the tragedy of tonight after the iftar. أعوذ بجلال وجهك الكريم أن ينقضي عني شهر رمضان أو يطلع الفجر من ليلتي هذه ولك قبلي تبعة أو ذنب تعذبني عليه. It's the first night of destiny. Our dua should be to hasten in the reappearance of Imam al-Mahdi. So let's recite dua al-Faraj together. Allahumma kun li waliyika حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك with one voice عليه في هذه وفي كل وليا وحافظا وقائدا ودليلا حتى تسكنه وتمتعه برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Please recite Surah Al-Fatiha after a loud salawat.